Greetings, travelers.
Greetings, travelers, for our ancient alien. Now, I'm calling it Ancient Aliens, but it's really Alien April. I keep
Alien
wanting to
April.
say
Yeah, we
Ancient
did.
Aliens, though.
Yeah, we already did the Ancient Aliens episode.
We
So,
did. We did.
and we
Yeah.
we thoroughly. I think I'm sad that we kind of had to debunk it as much as we did, but it is
Well,
what it is.
that is our job in life. I will say what's funny about this month, even though we didn't intend that, is that there are a whole bunch of UFO things. So we have another little breaking news.
Breaking news.
And apparently there was an UAP, unidentified flying, whatever, caught on camera over New York City. So we'll include
Oh
that link in
yeah.
the show notes because, New York aliens and then earthquake. Just going to say, if we want to go down a conspiracy theory, there's also an earthquake that happened in New Jersey today.
Right after that sighting too, which was
Yeah.
interesting. So
No. Okay. Now we're done being conspiracy theorists for a moment because
this
we are
whole
about to
episode is
talk.
conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
So
we're about to talk about one of my favorite conspiracies in a
well, there's
way.
a reason we're talking about it today because this is airing on a great holiday, and that is Earth Day.
Earth Day. I think it's the
Yep.
day, a couple days before, but yes, very
Yeah, a
close to
couple days
Earth
before.
Day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're coming out on the 12th, and it'll be the 15th. But that's exciting. It's a good day to celebrate all things about this wonderful planet called Dirt that we live on. Like, I love we are that creative that we called our planet Dirt. So,
I like
uh,
it. I like it.
but that's been what it's been. So, and that's what it always will be. But now we've got a guest today, right,
We
Erika?
do. We have a very, very special guest today.
Okay, now you're closer to this gentleman, so you can tell us all about this guy. So.
Well, I'm going to let him introduce himself, but I
Oh,
was very fortunate to have met him a while ago, and he is currently working on some work about this particular topic, but he has a lot of information on flat earthers. Yay!
oh,
So
what?
please, without further ado, Mr. Roger Grimes, welcome, welcome.
Hello, hello. Glad to be here. So glad to be here. I love talking about interesting topics, especially when there's energetic people on both sides. As long as nobody gets like crazy insane, right? Sometimes that happens. You're like, I don't want to have a fight over it, but I would love to have a discussion, an energetic discussion about it.
We
Well, you say that, but I've already created fights with our listening audience over the fact that Twilight vampires are the strongest. So I'm going to just say that again because it keeps poking the badger with a stick when I do.
one particular badger is going to come after you the next time he sees you. You know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to go back to introduce myself, I'm Roger Grimes. I have been doing computer security for 35 years. I've written 14 books.
Oh, wow.
Can't believe it. Earned all of these gray hairs and probably about 1,400 magazine articles. And I love, I love debates and I love looking at factual stuff. And I try to have an open mind. I'll say this: I think I'm one of the few people on this earth that if I have a strongly held belief that if you present to me good facts, that I will change my opinion. It only happens once or twice a year, but I've had this strongly held belief that I've been saying for years, and then someone comes back and goes yada yada yada. I look into it. It's a really good thing. It's a double blind study. And I go, you know what? You've convinced me that I was thinking wrong, and but so I'm good in that way. I grew up in a household for the first 18 years of my life or 17 years of my life where my mother believed in absolutely every spiritual mythology, Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, poltergeists, tarot cards, you name it. She didn't believe in reality that much, but we were surrounded by books and literature and all the crazy stuff and astrology and which is funny. She certainly believed in astrology really a whole lot, but I'm a twin and me and my twin were as different as we could be. And I thought that would be like the major thing. They would tell you astrology is not always right, but no.
So I have a question on that, but and then we'll get into this other thing. But growing up with all of that, especially if you grow up with it, did it change your views at all about things? Did you have experiences yourself, or did you just feel like your mom was a couple of French fries short of the Happy Meal?
Yeah, let me say, mostly around, maybe as teenagers do, 14, 15, started to have doubts and stuff. By the time I was 17, 18, I was a full-fledged skeptic about all kinds of things. And it led me to creating really good arguments, though, about against those things or for those things. But, ready for this? This is a wild story that I tell people all the time, because just because you believe something, even factually, like let's say you don't believe in spirits or ghosts or poltergeist or something, which let me say, I don't. Because I always wonder, like, why don't they stay then? That's always my biggest argument. Like, if ghosts are real, how come they don't just stay? Why do we all accept that they come and one person sees them and then they go away? Like, is there something in the spirit world that says they just can't stay for a day and hang out and talk to you and go on CNN? I don't know. So when I was 14 or 15, I was vacuuming my room, and I had this guinea pig cage that was on top of a set of dresser drawers, and it had a towel underneath of it. And I was just vacuuming in front of it, and I looked up and I saw all of this action happening and all the wood chips flying all around. And that cage flew off of the top of the dresser drawer onto my bed and shattered. I mean, flew about 3 foot across the room. It was a big guinea pig, but I don't think it had the mass to accelerate it. So I saw this happen. My mother came in hearing the noise, said it was a poltergeist or whatever. And let me say, I don't believe in any of that, but I can't explain what happened in that moment. It did happen.
Yep.
And I don't know what happened.
We use the term that was coined by Shirley Jackson, which is preternatural, stuff we don't understand yet. Hopefully someday we will. Someday we'll figure out, oh, what caused that? What was that? And that's us with ghosts and legends and all that is like, well, what did these people see? They saw something they can't explain, and then they tried to explain it. And, hopefully at some point we can figure it out. But then that's why we do this, what we do.
I thought my mom was crazy. I mean, to me, it was obvious. It was the meeting of the fifth dimension coming in and colliding with our 4D dimensions. I mean, that seemed to me to be obvious. The obvious explanation.
Obvious. I still think you had a miniature giant space hamster, and he is
he'd been working out on the spinning wheel so much that he got kind of like Conan, like a lot of steroids involved, possibly within the food. We don't know what's in there from the Chinese food that you buy for your pets, and so maybe it all came together in the perfect storm.
Superhero guinea pigs.
Yeah.
I like it. So what got you started then going down the path about flat earth? Let's define this. So flat earthers are people who believe that the earth is flat and not round. That they are called, if there's another name, I'm unaware of it, but I know they're called.
The Flat Earth Society was, most famous for this.
What got you started down the path of flat earthers?
I think first, when the Flat Earth Society came out and that started to become something, I don't know, about 10 years ago, I thought it was a goof. And I thought everybody was in on the goof. Like everybody knew this was just one of these strange things you support, that everybody's kind of a cultural thing. And, it's like, I don't know, like calling that's fire, or, that's stupid. And it really means it's great or something like that. But then, there seemed to be people that were truly invested in it and didn't see it as a goof. And then there became lots of people that started to present their facts. There were famous people, basketball players that were taking pictures on airplanes and putting their cup on the tray and saying that proves that the earth is not round. And then it occurred to me, no, there's a whole subculture of the world that really gets sucked into it for one reason or another. I think the people selling the t-shirts and stuff still think it's a goof, but you have a lot of people, and I was really mesmerized by the amount of facts people would bring. It would be computer people like myself. They weren't all dumb hillbillies. There were many times people had gone and graduated college, and they just and I'd say a lot of times they would start to research it, be skeptical, and then somehow get converted. And then they became some of the strongest converts, and they started using their pseudo-physics to show how flat Earth really existed. And so I guess I get attracted to anything that is impacting humanity when it seems like it's settled science, like people not believing somebody landed on the moon, or I don't know, the aliens built the pyramids or something like that, which I always think is really a big insult to Egyptians.
Exactly.
That's what we said on our show.
They're like, our ancestors were too stupid to do anything. They couldn't figure out fire. They couldn't build wheels. They couldn't build roads. The Nazca lines were obviously alien, These were magnificent works created by very intelligent people. Yes, they studied the stars and figured out alignments and things like that.
Yeah, they had the circumference of the Earth within like 20 miles
yeah,
millennia before by using two sticks in the ground.
yeah, it's like
They're really good with
century.
the tools they had.
6th century, everybody's like, oh, when Magellan circumnavigated the Earth, that's when we figured out the world was around. No, we kind of guessed around the 6th century, and we kind of knew. We were just trying to figure it out. That was the first guy to just do it.
Yeah, and here's the part that's amazing about the flat earthers. And so I lived in Key Largo, Florida for about 11 years, and I've grown up my entire life on a boat. First in the Chesapeake Bay, I lived in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I was in the Chesapeake Bay with my dad fishing. And then, I've always lived on a coast where I've had to be running from hurricanes, which I don't believe in. It just seems the gods get upset and decide to blow heavy wind. But one of the things you learn really quickly when you're on a boat is that you can't see the bottom of large objects. Like there'll be a super tanker or oil tanker 10 miles away, and you cannot see the bottom of that oil tanker, until you go up like in the crow's nest or something like that. I mean, I would say anybody that's out on the ocean that spent any significant time in the ocean would tell you, oh, I see ready evidence that the Earth must be round because my vision is occluded, even on a flat day, on a flat lake, in a flat ocean. I can't see the bulb, the nose of the ocean liner, till I go up in the crow's nest. So it seems to me that it was funny when you hear somebody say the Earth's flat. You're like, I guess you've never been fishing on a boat.
Yeah, I mean, some people say, oh, well, if I've got my telescope and I look out and watch the boat sail out, oh, it doesn't go over the horizon. I can still see it go. But I'm like, but if you had a telescope that's capable of looking at stars and planets and you're looking across the water, do you see London across the way when you angle towards London? No, because the Earth isn't going to work that way. It's if it was flat, you should see them. So,
or like back in the day in the 1600s and 1700s, pirates, if they were trying to sneak attack people, they'd sometimes pull into a cove, but they would actually put the boat over. They'd pull the boat over sideways. I forget what it was called, killing or whatever, but they'd put the boat sideways to get the sails down so the person wouldn't see them. But you're like, well, that boat's still sticking a good, even with the sails sticking there 20, 30, 40 feet out of the water. How were they not spotted every time? Well, because they couldn't see it till they got closer. Because it was the roundness of it. But the thing that attracts me the most is just the humanity. It really says something about humanity that we question every fact, that we're distrustful of scientists. So many people don't believe in either some type of science or this or that, and will readily believe in something else, right? That doesn't have as much scientific basis. So, what do they call it? The Dunning-Kruger effect. The less you're trained in it, the more likely you are to think that you're really good in something.
Well, it's interesting because if, we go back in history, there was a point in time in history, people thought the Earth was flat, right? Going back in the day, there are maps. Way back. We're in the way back machine, Mark. And it's a journey. We need snacks in this way back machine. But we go all the way back, and that's just what people thought. And they thought it ended on two sides, right? Which we can get into so many layers of science on this, but it ended, and then suddenly somebody went, oh, it's actually round. It's round. Right.
Well, they thought that it ended in walls, right? A giant ice wall. And the modern theory is even that the ice walls are patrolled. And if you get too close, they'll put you in jail. That they've actually got guys with guns, like NASA with guns out there and stuff.
At the ice walls.
At the ice walls that protect, the edges of the Earth. Sometimes that's, the entrance to hollow Earth. Sometimes that's the edge of the Earth. It depends. There's a few different versions of it. I think what scares me the most about all this is that, back in the 70s, 80s, I think it was like there was some survey and it was like 95% of the world believes the Earth is round. And there was 5% that still thought in America, it was 5% of Americans thought the Earth was flat. And I was like, wow, 5%. But then they did that survey again a few years ago and it dropped it's like 80%. It's like 84% now. I'm like, wait, that's what? Yeah, how does that happen? And then when you cut to the 18 to 23 crowd, when they broke it down, it was like 66%. That's almost half don't believe the earth is round. And I'm like, whoa, what has happened? Where did this come from? And I think they were saying that it kind of like spiked around 9/11 was when it started shifting. And conspiracy theory started rising again. And I guess it was around 2015 when that survey was done. It's like I'd like to see it again more recent, but that's crazy.
I don't think you do want to see it more recent, Mark. I don't think you're going to like the results. Well, I kind of wonder, Roger, what are your thoughts on? I remember growing up where Pluto was a planet, and then I did a book report on it. So I have a book report on Pluto, and then it wasn't a planet. So I had a book report on a star or whatever. And then it went back to, I think it's back to being a planet now. I can't remember where we're at with Pluto. But, I obviously moon landing, all this stuff, right? We had these as facts, but it seems to me like now we have access to more information and more research stuff easily, right? Where we don't have to go check out books from a library to look this stuff up. And yet we believe stuff that can be shown less. Do you think this has a lot to do with like social media? Because we're fed information all the time.
Yeah, and again, I think all of it's possible before social media, but certainly if you get a belief, you can go down the rabbit hole, right? A lot quicker and get to a lot more people. What I find amazing is how even today, for a relatively low amount of money, you can disprove flat Earth, particularly just by buying a cell phone and buying a balloon, and recapturing the video that it shoots to the internet. I mean, there's a lot of videos on the internet of people sending up, their cell phone cameras 80,000 feet, or the guy Kittinger that's jumping out of the balloon, the hot air balloon at whatever 1,000 feet, and the Earth has a curve to it. So you literally can do citizen science, or the cheaper one is get a ladder. There's a guy that one of my beloved debunkings of flat Earth is the guy that just got like a 20-foot utility ladder, and he goes to the beach, waits for the sun to go down, and then he climbs up the ladder, and you can see the sun again. Yeah. Like it just doesn't take that much to disprove flat Earth theory. But I had a good friend that was a flat earther. And although I always say this, that when I meet the guys that kind of believe in conspiracy theories or whatever, they don't believe in one, they believe in all of them. Like I think there's a strong correlation between you believe the Earth's flat and maybe you don't believe that we landed on the moon, and that you don't think 9/11 happened or the president was in on it or something. He believed them all. And most of the people I've met that believe a conspiracy theory believe a lot of them. It would be, you think factually, or just what are the odds that you would believe one conspiracy theory, maybe two in your lifetime, because there's such unusual things. But no, they believe in all 20 of these things are all true at once, despite the scientific. So I think there is something about the human mind and the ability of us to want to be intoxicated by it, to thinking, disbelieving facts. And I part of it is, I'm like, I get it. For the flat earthers, I got to say that's one of the easiest ones to believe, because the Earth appears flat. You walk. It doesn't seem like people in, Japan or China or Australia are falling off the Earth. I mean, I get it. Like your experience of everything in your experience. I think all of us, when you're a kid and they're teaching the Earth is round, you see in the globe, I think you do kind of think about it a little bit, like, how don't we fall off out of this gravity thing? Why don't I see it being round? But I think it's interesting, like you said, Erika, that once you get exposed to all the evidence, or like, then like, if the Earth is flat, then all of these astronauts have been lying to us. Like, I don't know what I'm sure someone has the number on the internet, but the sheer amount of people that must be lying to you for flat Earth to be uninvolved, not in a, they're not communicating with each other, and it's large periods of time that must be lying to you for flat Earth to be true. It's got to be in the millions. I mean, it's everybody in the space program, half of people in NASA. It's got to be weather people. It's got to be all the camera people. It's got to be mountaineers, people who've been on top of Everest. Like all of a sudden you have all these completely unrelated, uncommunicating people that decide that they decide they want to lie to you, and to what benefit, right? That's the big one, is like, why would they? Okay, they're lying to you. Why?
What are they hiding? What are they hiding?
This is the interesting thing, because you brought up a point. So I want to go back and I want both of your inputs on this, right? So growing up the way I did get into some conspiracy theories, right? I never thought the earth was flat. I did research on Pluto, the decimal system card thing, had that down. Okay. Knew it was round. But there are some things that were interesting. Like when 9/11 happened, I was around people who very much conspiracy theory. I'm very lucky to have a friend that was in the CIA and in the intelligence part and in the Pentagon when this happened, right? Physically in the building, who was able to kind of go, yeah, that's not what happened. And, but if you literally, like you said, go down the path of these were rockets and not planes and blah, 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 and all this stuff happened, you can go down that path, as my dogs decide to bark. You can go down that path and get entangled. And I know, like, there are some conspiracies that you just go, is that true? Like, we talk about aliens all the time, and the fact that the government, for the most part, kind of goes, no, there's not aliens, but there's this thing that we maybe got non-human DNA out of this ship, but there aren't aliens. Like, there's, so my question to you guys is, do you think that we want to be in on something? Like we have a trust factor, and that determines whether or not we believe? Because the opposite is true, is that some people will believe one version of what one person says. That doesn't have to be a conspiracy theorist. We see this in politics all the time now. You know what I mean? They say it's true and everybody's like, oh, that's true. And you're like, but what? Wait, what?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And I think I don't always like to admit it, but the human experience, if you look at our core, is often of fear, right? Of being fearful of other people, being distrustful automatically. I mean, we like to think of ourselves, and I like to think of myself, oh, I love everybody and stuff. But I think, like back in the day when you were a caveman or cavewoman, if you saw another stranger coming up, you reacted in fear, and you needed to be, because oftentimes that meant it was another tribe coming to steal your food or your supplies, or, war or whatever. So I think we grew up having all this. I think we have automatic in our DNA is fear and distrust of things. And then we sublimated a lot. And I think it's still there, so that when something comes out that maybe that's a touch off to us, it's not that hard to start going down that rabbit hole, because I think we are fearful, distrustful people. And maybe I'm throwing my wife under the bus, but last night I was showing her a YouTube clip of these girls that had been, their entire family had been locked in chains in a house, and they barely escaped and everything. And my wife's like, those girls are scamming. They're doing something scamming us. I was like, what are you talking about? The police got evidence. There's chains. The parents are locked up forever. And she's like, there's just something off. like literally, there's police evidence. This horrendous house of horrors. And my wife's like, I'm not sure. She looks a little distrustful.
I honestly think it goes back to classism, right? To prove the earth was round, you had to have science, you had to have education, you had to have the money to be able to do this, these explorations, to do it, to afford a ladder. But back then, in the older days, you were the peasants on the ground. You couldn't do that and all that. And now I think we're getting to that point now where we've got the YouTuber with the heart of gold who's going to go prove that the earth maybe really is flat. I'm going to fly in a plane with a level. And because otherwise the plane has to kind of tilt its nose down to go around the curve. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. So I think that's where the more modern wanting this to be real is that the earth is flat and we've been lied to. It's that government distrust. It's the distrust of higher education, the distrust.
And then the best part is you then become part of a subculture that you feel a stronger belongingness, right? Maybe you can't feel like you belong to quantum physicist scientist, but I have these other people and they're cool. And I all of a sudden have this built-in entire sub community where we're together, and there's got to be a feeling of, I'm in this group, and a feeling of love and being cared about. And maybe that might even be like a religion where you're like, these other people don't understand us, but within this group, we have this core set of beliefs, and it bonds us, and it gives us familiarity and culture. And so I can see the draw.
No, agreed. And
That's where this goes.
yeah. But we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with more Flat Earth.
Greetings, travelers. Now available on Audible and other audiobook platforms, Eerie, Appalachia. Join us, won't you, as we discuss creatures like the Popelick Monster, the White Things, the Snallygaster, the Wampus Cat, the Lizard Man of Skateboard Swamp, Bunny Man Bridge, and the Ohio Grassman. All these creatures and more await you if you dare listen to Eerie, Appalachia, presented by Mark Muncy, History Press, and Four Horsemen Publishing.
Prepare to be devoured. The Wolves of Wharton is a 6-part complete book series by Eerie Travels producer Beau Lake. It has been called dark and visceral, steamy, dramatic, and a fresh take on the werewolf mythos. If you like action, adventure, a large serving of body horror, and some steamy relations, the Wolves of Wharton series is for you. Pick it up wherever books are sold, or at linktree.com/Beau__Lake.
We're back. So you said something earlier that I thought was interesting, is that there is nothing truly to gain from the earth being flat versus round, right? So like aliens are real, and if you believe aliens are real, and we have our beliefs. I'm just saying hypothetically in this situation, listeners, don't lose your shit, right? If you say that aliens are real and the government is going, no, they're not real, for instance, because the government's the bad guy in this alien debacle, right? Because, whether you had an experience or not, people had experienced something, right? And then you can be right against this, and it proves that these things exist. What do you think it proves? If somebody was able to prove Earth is flat, they can't, because science. But hypothetically, what would we gain? Like, why even bother having this debate?
Well, what's worse is there is something to gain, but not for the people telling the truth. Like for the scientists and all the people that say the Earth is round, there's nothing to gain for them saying it's flat, right? I don't know what conspiracy you'd have to come up with about why millions of people are lying to you that are unconnected to each other. What's the gain? But there is a gain for a lot of people to being so, like all the people selling the t-shirts and creating the convention. So there is certainly something to gain on the other side. And that's where it's kind of sad that you think in some cases people are taking advantage of people. Like there's entire websites dedicated to selling stuff so the government can't read your brain. Yep. The tinfoil hats and advanced versions, and they make money. And I asked the guy that ran one of the websites, one of the most popular tinfoil hat website, and he said he made about $60 per customer. And the guy was making a ton of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and by selling products to stop people from reading your brain. And I said, oh, so he's literally feeding off paranoid schizophrenics and things like that. Knowing what he was kind of doing. But so there are people feeding on the other side. And again, for the people inside, I think that really believe it, it's just, well, first of all, you genuinely believe it. You've come across some fact, something the scientist or someone told you didn't, and you're at least in the way that you felt, didn't bear out to be true. And so that made you flip and turn against it, in a hard way. And now your mind is kind of shuttered. And I say a lot of people, once you get a strongly held belief, most people, very tough to turn them, right? It almost becomes defense of the belief. more than anything else versus, and if you hit them with a real fact, they're spending all their time trying to disprove that fact or not believe that fact because there's some emotional commitment. This is now part of my self-identity is that I believe this, and I'm going to fight it, because if you take that away from them, you're taking a part of how they identify. Like I identify as a computer security guy, and that's part of my identity. And if you take that away from me, I'm losing some part of myself, the way that I identify myself, not only to others, but the way internally I think about myself. So if I'm a flat earther and I feel that way, it's going to become this religious conviction that you take it out of my cold, dead hands. And I don't care how many facts, you send at me, you're the bad guy, you're aligned with the government. I get why you're doing that, because you're aligned with the government. The government's paying you to say that. I mean, they'll start to develop things that it's very tough. Even like, even if you're trying, maybe I'm a flat earther or a round earther and you've got facts for the flat earth. I always like to think that I'm I truly think I can be convinced that my strongly held belief is wrong. But it still takes a whole lot of convincing. I mean, and I think I'm one of the rare people, 4 out of 100 people, you can convince them to change their strongly held belief. The rest of the people, they're going to fight to the death.
Well, what's interesting? So I'm working on a biography myself, but one of the things I realized is, and I had this when I was teaching students, like I do these classes, like what it's like if you make minimum wage, right? And I was very popular at the Great American Teach-Ins, by the way, by the teachers, because I'd be like, let me explain what you can't afford. But I'd go, and one of the things that I thought was interesting, and it took me a while to actually even realize this was happening, was we are trained not I'm going to try to say this now. I'm using my words and I'm going to put them in order. We are trained from a very young age that it is not okay to not know something, and that it's not okay to be ignorant.
That's a great point.
Somehow ignorant got switched with stupid. And ignorant means you're missing information, right? Stupid means you have an inability to learn. It's a derogatory term, but there are people that cannot learn things, right? And cannot acquire knowledge, are good at other things, can do hands-on things, but can't necessarily acquire book smarts, right? But from a very young age, we're not allowed to ask questions, because if you raise your hand, you'll be made fun of by all the other people in your life, right? Around you. Like, you can't ask questions, you can't do that. I think this ends up compounding into kind of what you said, which is my precious, the Lord of the Rings, my precious in knowledge that you believe you have, right? You have to hold your ground, because if you don't, you'll be stupid. Like, one of the biggest things I always did is I will give my opinion on something, but I'm going to start with, this is my opinion, and I don't have all the facts. Like, our listeners ask us questions all the time, and me and Mark are like, well, this is what we think. We don't have any idea what it is because we don't know, But I think this is part of this deeply held, like, once you have it, if you relinquish that, you're dumb. There's something wrong with you that you would even believe that to begin with, right? Versus going, oh, I had misinformation. Because I happen to be one of those 4 people too, that if you come and tell me, first of all, I don't think I'm an expert on things unless I have a lot of experience, and I still don't know everything. I can just go, from this swath of experience, here's what I understand. But it's rare. I agree, but
that is a great point, that we don't want to appear ignorant or stupid. But that's even kind of the wilder thing about a lot of the conspiracy theories, is that people will make a leap into something and then say, okay, well, because that's wrong, this has to be true. Like with UFOs or UAPs or whatever, people go, I see an object that cannot be explained by any science that I've heard of, right? This object is moving faster than the speed of sound, faster than the object. It disappears, goes into the water, doing all this other stuff. So indeed, it then must be this foreign thing. And that's all right. But you've got to realize, okay, because you say it doesn't fit into any known human physics, to then go, that has to be alien beings. It's this weird thing about humanity that I have to fill in. Now that I don't know this thing, and I have to take a guess at this thing, I'm now going to fill it in, and that becomes what it has to be. when in fact it can be many, many other things. But people will go, okay, I can't identify that as a regular thing, so it had to be that. Or my story about where I saw my hamster, and I can't explain it. And maybe it was some ethereal being or something, or the dimension thing. But so I sit back and I go, okay, I recognize I can't explain what happened, and I didn't rush to fill in the gap. Like my mind started to go, hey, there's all these potential things it could be, along with the poltergeist. That's my mother. But my mother was absolutely convinced that the day she died that I'd seen evidence of the poltergeist right in front of me. And you could not convince her. So you're right. It's like when we don't know, then there's this other piece, because we don't want to be seen as not knowing. Yes, is that perhaps one of the biggest weaknesses, to turn to someone and go, I don't know.
I'll tell you,
It takes strength to say it.
It's very few people will do that. I mean, I come from doing an HR executive, and the amount of people that will sit and nod and smile in meetings and stuff like that. Oh yeah. And then you go, okay, well, explain to me, blah. And they can't, because they just nod and smile. But dear God, if you call them out, they'll get defensive. They'll do all these things. It's you can't be wrong. You can't not know things. And this weird defense mechanism comes up that is not based on reason or logic, as Spock would say. It's this weird emotional response to having this come at you. Like, that's why me and Mark say preternatural. Like, we have no idea. Like, people have encountered things that there is not a scientific, logical explanation for as of yet. Like, you show these things and you go, okay, explain to me these footprints. And obviously some have been bear footprints and other things, and people with really cool Bigfoot shoes. If you're listening to us, we still want a pair of those. But outside of that, there are definitely some experiences where people have giant footprints from something walking around that is not whatever. To just go, oh, that can't be anything. Who knows what the hell it is? But to assume that you absolutely know what it is without, positive fact. And we talk about this because in the paranormal preternatural community, we say it all the time, people, Bigfoot experts, who will tell you it is an ape. It is a descendant from an ape. It is a physical ape-like being, right? And then you will have them that say, no, it's an alien being. They're coming from another planet. No, it's dimension shifting, and they're a creature, but from this other thing. And then you have the ones that go, oh, no, it's a nature spirit. And I'm sure we're not even tackling all the different versions.
There's so many on that. That's, a whole other thing. And then we even get into the religious aspect of all this, because some people, this is a religion to them. I mean, my favorites were, they didn't believe we were on a flat earth. They thought it was a hollow earth, but we were inside it. And that was the guys in Estero that Cyrus Teed and his organization, they came down there, and they were convinced that it was in Estero, Florida, that this was the center of hollow earth, and that the sun was a big gas ball that we circled around, and instead of the other way around. And they brought in lots of people, came down to this site, and they believed it. And they moved in, and they came up with devices to prove it. And it was crazy, the stuff they did. And the only reason they, debunked it was, well, the guy who invented it all was crazy. And is also the Koreshan State Park you can go down to and study this. It's pretty cool. They had a model of the earth with their hollow earth. It's crazy. It's one of those wonderful things. But what my favorite thing was the last living Koreshan was in the 1980s. And they asked her, when did she finally no longer believe that they lived in hollow earth? And it's like, oh, when I saw man land on the moon. That's what it took to shake it from her. And that's what some of these beliefs, they are literally a religious belief to some of these people. And, breaking that is
and think about, like, the evidence is so obvious in our personal experience about flat earth not being flat. Like the moon is with us, and it goes through shape changes where there's shadows against it. Or eclipse, we're getting ready to have an eclipse soon, and in order for that eclipse to happen as frequently as it does if the Earth was flat, and the arc that it takes across, where you can literally call people across the country and see where this thing's happening, it'd really be extraordinary for the eclipse to happen as frequently as it does if we were just a disk.
Yeah.
And it would be in a completely different pattern. And so, or the moon. So, we can look and see other things that are round, knowingly round, in front of us. And you're like, okay, the moon's round, but the Earth's not. I can look out and see Saturn and see circular rings around Saturn with a telescope that I can get in my friend's house. But somehow I'm claiming the thing I'm on isn't round.
Yeah, but I think it comes back to you can't be wrong. So changing your mind about something or even making a decision, like, I don't know if this is just something just universally we're taught, you make a decision, that's the decision, that's the way it is. Or it used to be, this is the, folk tales, this is the lineage, that's the way it is, right? Like, we have so much of that it's so interesting, just the topic of trying to break that, to go, well, maybe I'm not as right as I could have been. And I think that's true. So I kind of wonder how many people are in this organization or organizations and just don't have the ability to admit they're wrong.
Yeah. And let me say, I also see this other thing where some people will see something. So like I have this daughter that didn't believe in UFOs. And then one day she had what she felt was a UFO experience when she was 19 or 20. And it so shook her to her core that she was shaking as she called to tell me this. And she's like, Dad, I went to the ocean front. I was just taking pictures of the ocean. And I got these UFOs. And she sent me these pictures, this wild picture of these UFOs, like 4 or 5 orbs on them. And it was just amazing looking. And I'm looking. And then she told me that she didn't notice them while she was taking the picture. I was like, oh, okay. So they weren't visually in front of her. And she goes, it's just amazing that they were there and I didn't see it, but the camera caught it. And I was like, and I started looking, I said, man, those really look like parking lot lights. So yes. I, Google parking lot light images, and within 20, 30 images, I find the exact thing.
Yeah.
And I said, honey, maybe your camera did something weird with the parking lot lights or something. Could you go back to that parking lot? She does. And indeed, the parking lot lights in that parking lot were that image. And she goes, I had a crack on my cell phone. But so it took my scientific daughter not long to go from I don't believe in UFOs to, again, I see this thing that I can't explain, to it became this emotional experience. I had another time there's a plane. If you look this up on the internet, it's just the wildest thing. It's a TRB-3. Yep. TR-3B, and it's like a triangle looking thing. It's an Air Force experimental airplane. It's been around since the 70s, but my son had told me he'd seen one landing in a field. It was landing silently, and he's the type of guy that he's scientific all the way. He's like, he goes, if I believed in UFOs, this would be what I thought it was. Well, about a day later, one of them came over our house. And again, it's this triangle thing with an orb that's silent and it's floating. And I remember the next door neighbor, she was in her hot tub. She started shrieking and crying. She just thought the aliens were here to get us. And she was crying and shaking. And I was like, it's an Air Force plane called a TRB-3.
To be fair, it is still unofficially unconfirmed that thing exists. It's the Black Manta project, all that. Nope. No, you ask the government. Nope, doesn't exist. Don't know what you're talking about.
The government doesn't help, right? By their constant denials. And then we find out they were lying to us and stuff. Yes. But, I think, again, people can, your experience, you're looking at something, you can't explain what it is. And so it has to be this particular thing. And so maybe that goes back, Erika, it goes back to, I can't be wrong. So I have to fill it in with something.
Well, and it's also a weird phenomenon that we can't not know something. So I had this realization yesterday, right? Somebody in my life has had to have stents put in their heart, right? They're okay. So no worries out there, travelers. But I've heard this all the time. ER, Chicago Hope, like name a show. I've heard stents, blah, blah, heart. And they talked about how this one particular stent, that they had to add additional stents because something moved. And then I literally, and still right now, I go, you know what? I had an idea of what I thought stents were in a heart. I have no effing clue what this is. I don't understand the science at all. And I realized, like, backpedaling on it, I went, all of my information, and I'm using quotation marks, was from shows like ER and Chicago Hope and maybe
Yeah.
True Crime and blah blah, something like that. I literally no medical science house was used at all in this formulation.
That goes to that one theory that they call it the Beverly Hills Cop Index for red meat. There was a bit in the Beverly Hills Cop movie where one of the other cops is reading a magazine, and he says, hey, it says here the average American has 44 pounds of undigested red meat in their stomach. And the guy's like, why are you telling me this? He's like, because you eat a lot of red meat. And it was a joke. It was the guy just wrote it into the screenplay. There's no article that says that. There's nothing about that anywhere in history, but there are medical journals that have pointed out, oh, we should cut out red meat because there's 4 pounds of undigested red meat in the average American male. And they quote that article that doesn't exist. It was made up by a screenwriter.
You're the one. How about when I was a kid, the parents would always say you can't go swimming for 30 minutes after you eat.
After you eat.
Well, I've been yelling at my parents in my head for my entire adult life. And then I was with my grandkids that were wearing me out of my pool. And I remember thinking, I'm going to tell them they can't swim for 30 minutes after they eat because I need a 30-minute break from trying to rescue these kids jumping in the pool. And I went, oh, I get it. I just didn't know why I mistakenly thought they believed it. They just wanted a 30-minute break.
And you're a cybersecurity expert. Remember the guy who invented the cybersecurity rule to change your password every 90 days? He invented it up on the top of his head because the government came to him and said, hey, we need standards on passwords. He's like, okay. And even he's like, I don't know why I did that. It was just something I came up with.
I love, Erika, your point about us wanting to know that the feeling of uncertainty, certainly there must be something human that it hurts us or distresses us, gives us anxiety. So we're going to want to fill that uncertainty with something instead.
Yeah, I think that you have to have, and I don't know, there's probably science associated with this, right? But I feel like you have to have stable pieces of information. If you do not have stable pieces of information, you cannot function, right? And we learn these stable pieces of information. Like, my granddaughter had her second birthday recently. And of course, they brought out the cake and they brought out the candle. And what is the first thing that she does? Reaches for that candle because it's a light and it's flickering, right? And of course, it's when do you let the kid get burned to understand that fire is hot, right? We don't inherently know things necessarily that are survival. So there's stuff that we need to be taught. But I'll tell you, this heart thing with the stents has been driving me crazy for days. I just haven't decided to sit down and actually look at what medically, these things do. But the fact that I had to go, wait a minute, because this contradictory piece of information was butting up against what, House taught me, I had to be like, I literally have no clue how this works. And I was talking to my boyfriend. I'm like, do you understand how this works? And he's like, no, I don't think so. But it's rare that you find humans that can do that because we have to know. If we don't, we have to insert a piece of information and then dunk it and caulk it in there and make sure it's stable because otherwise, oh my God, we don't know something.
Yeah, and you ready for this? This is the part that gets me great. We're in at least right now, this podcast, I think we're all in America, but we think we're these, scientific, fact-supporting people, but there are so many tribes of different beliefs, that are really warring against each other. Like I listen to people say, well, these Sunni and Shia people, back in the dark ages, trying to follow religion and laws from 3,000 years ago. I'm like, we're just not that different. We have our beliefs, and we'll argue and scream. And we have, sometimes some people would say some religion's mythology, an atheist would say that it's mythology, but it could be flat earth. It could be, there's all kinds of beliefs that you could or couldn't have that becomes a tribal thing to where, it could lead to civil war, right? It could lead to somebody. There are certainly people that kill other people because you disrespected their beliefs, or they're in their particular emotional or mental state. So that fills something that they've learned, a belief fills it in. I always think about the large number of people that end up, unfortunately, harming a child or killing their child. And they're like, the devil's in the child. I'm like, wow. So they read this thing, and then when they had mental illness, it took that chunk to fill in that belief. I love that, we want to fill in the uncertainty, even if it's, I guess, crazy uncertainty, or a crazy belief to fill in the uncertainty. And we believe lots of things. And on top of that, let me maybe end with one more. It's hard to believe that we don't really know what reality is. Like when we're staring out, like, lawyers and cops will tell you that one of the worst things is first person witnesses, right? How many people have been convicted and put on death row that then later on the DNA showed wasn't them? But the victim was like, that guy did it. I saw that guy do it. So first person account is even terrible. Or even I'm talking bad about my family. One of my daughters calls and tells me that she was sitting out in the middle of Pongo, Virginia, which is just backwoods area, a lot of open farmland in Virginia. It's a beautiful place. And she's waiting for a friend late at night, and a bunch of ghosts of Civil War soldiers come walking by. They were coming by in rows of 5. She watched them, and it terrified her as they went around her car and off into the field. She was very terrified by this sight, and said, "Ghosts, you can't tell me that ghosts don't exist, because I've experienced and I watched these ghosts as Civil War soldiers walk in front of me." And I was like, listen, the thing I can tell you is that's what you experienced. That's what you remember, but you can't make that leap into it had to be ghosts, because it could have been lots of other things, including that you had a mental breakdown, it could have been chemicals. And she goes, I was really high at the time. She goes, I'd taken mushrooms or something like that.
That may open us up to reality. Again, preternatural. We don't know.
Like, you should have led with that part of the story.
Well, and it's one thing that I have said for a really long time. And again, this is back from doing HR for 30 plus years. Perception is reality. How somebody is perceiving a situation is their reality. And that's true why eyewitness accounts, things like that, aren't necessarily great to go on. They're helpful, but they're not great. And they prove this, where 10 different people witnessing the same event, if you then put them in a room and say, what did you witness? That story is never the same. And actually, police officers look for a consistent story, because if there's a consistent story, they believe people are making it up.
Yep.
Because
they work too hard on it.
Yeah, they work too hard. So if we have the perception versus reality and the things that we don't know, such as other dimensions, there are people who, not even high, have had the glitches in the matrix, and you hear their stories, and not you have to believe every single one of them, but some of them are very sane, whatever people, and can literally, it looks like they stepped out of our dimension into something else and then stepped back, not because of fantastical creatures or this or Yetis. Like literally they were in the same town with just minor little tweaks to it. And then they woke up the next day and they're back. There's a lot that we don't know, but to believe in your knowledge so vehemently that you cannot expand your mind to know something else makes us more ignorant. And I don't think people realize that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to not know. It's okay to not have a certainty on something. Just keep exploring to see what that thing is and get all of the information before you make a decision. I mean, we use the term informed decision, means that you hear every side of it. So if you don't know whether the earth is round or flat, go absolutely listen to what the people of that believe the earth is flat say. Go look at what the people who are scientific experts who say the earth is round, right? But if somebody says it's this way because it can't be anything else, that's not true for you. It can be however you want. Maybe you think it's a giant, horseshoe shape.
Yeah, you have to be open to just being inquisitive and asking the experts. Like, if you want to learn about flat earth, you could talk to a rocket scientist, like any rocket scientist, right? The people that literally are launching the rockets, that will tell you if the earth was flat, we'd have to do different calculations, or our rockets, or long-term ballistic rockets, or space rockets. Elon Musk, maybe they'll believe Elon Musk, right? Literally, like, why would Elon Musk, who wants to go to Mars, be lying to you? But be open to, like, a lot of times, let's say I was having an argument with somebody about COVID vaccines. They were disbelieving to me, very upset with me. I said, don't believe what I'm saying. Just go to any ER you have and talk to them about this subject. You know, don't believe me. Go to somebody that, or if you have a friend that works in the healthcare community that actually works in a hospital, go talk to them about their experiences within that facility. And they don't. They would rather argue and not believe. They don't want to even search the knowledge if it all it took was to drive 15 miles and visit a local hospital and ask a question of an ER doctor or an administrator, you know, or again, talking to a rocket. It's not so easy to find a rocket scientist, but there are a lot of rocket scientists online. And so you could say, you know, do you think the earth is flat or round? And if you had that belief, what is it that would tell you that? And again, I tell people, get a 20-foot step ladder, go to the beach.
Well,
Like
it's
literally,
true.
it doesn't take that much. So you've got this really strongly held, you're selling t-shirts, you're going to conventions, you have this community, and you believe the earth is flat, but it literally would take 3 hours of your time to truly prove for yourself whether or not the earth was flat. Because you would have strong evidence. It'd be hard for other people to refute. Why did the 20-foot ladder make the sun reappear? You know, maybe I have to look online and see what the flat earthers are come up to fight that one.
I like the new one was the recently in a documentary where they had some flat earthers and they had bought a very specific laser that was on a very specific gyroscopic thing so that it wouldn't be affected by whatever they say affects the you know, the bending of light and stuff. And then they would shine it through a little hole and then go so many yards away and had another hole, and the camera would aim through and it would see the light. But if the curve was curved, they'd have to raise it like 2 feet. And they were like, well, we're not seeing the light. We're not seeing the light. And they're like, well, hey, raise it 2 feet. And there was the light. And they literally proved that the earth was round right there themselves and couldn't empirically take it.
Well, the one thing I was going to say is, though, there's a responsibility on both sides of this. There's one to go look and get the information and understand people are going to be opinionated on what they think is true. We've seen this in every paranormal community that we've seen, is they will vehemently tell you, like I made reference, like I have, you know, people who say ghosts are, that's the ghost of a child. No, they cosplay, ghost cosplay, because every spiritual belief that I know of, regardless if it's spiritual, you know, whatever, believes that it's a soul, whatever, right? You have a non-formed entity that is your soul, your spirit, your whatever. And so you don't have a child ghost. You have a ghost that might have been a child previously, and that's what they're displaying, but you don't have a child ghost. But trust me, I can get into arguments with our, you know, even some of our travelers on this topic, because they're like, no, it was a child ghost and it was Rosie and blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. So you have to be prepared that somebody's going to give you their ferocious opinion and think you're wrong. But you have to be willing to accept that that's what they think. And vice versa. If somebody comes to you and asks your opinion, preface, this is my opinion. I don't necessarily think other opinions are wrong, but here's what I believe.
Yeah, and you ready for this? And maybe this again is my second good ending point, is that it has nothing to do with intelligence. You know, right. Your belief in particular things. Just yesterday, so I wrote a book on quantum physics, how it impacts computers and quantum encryption and all this stuff. And so I really love quantum physics. And I was trying to write this introduction to quantum mechanics for this particular group of the Cloud Security Alliance, Quantum Safe Secure Working Group I belong to. I made a multi-page introduction, a primer to quantum physics. And the quantum physicists, I'm like one of the few non-quantum physicists in the group. They're tearing me up, telling me I'm talking about it wrong. And so I said, let's have a meeting to find out what you think I have wrong, right? Because and it was funny. They were so adamant in their beliefs that they just said, basically, I could tell they thought I was stupid, you know? And I said, no, listen, guys, I'm not y'all, but I'm just trying to communicate this in an easy way to the layman. You can, and they literally said, listen, you don't need to explain quantum physics. Just put the math. Just put the math, and the math is self-explanatory. I'm like, it's not self-explanatory, and our audience, which are intended IT professionals, are not going to look at Schrodinger's equation and linear algebra and go, oh, it's obvious. And then they were saying the math explains everything. I said, it doesn't explain entanglement. Like entanglement is when two objects touch each other and the rest of their lives are entangled in such a way that their behaviors are linked. And when one changes, the other changes, even if they're across the universe. And it happens 6 times faster than the speed of light. I said, and we also don't believe that you can go faster than the 6 times. So we need to let them know there's not things, we don't know why things like, okay, we know it happens. We don't know why it happens, how it's doing it. They said, we do know it. It's the math. It's the math. And they were just yelling at me and everything. And I even said, I think quantum physics is not completely understood. It's completely understood by this math. I said, no, I think there's a good chance that other people will probably continue to get Nobel Prizes on quantum physics as they have for the last time. I don't think we've seen the last of people that were awarded a Nobel Prize in physics for quantum physics. I said, I think there's still some things to explore. And they literally said, no, it's all been explained. I said, no, I think we're still trying to find out if there's dimensions and if there is other particles that would go in the physics standard model. And they're like, no, it's all explained. It's all explained. And they were just, I was like, we just added the Higgs boson just a little while ago. I said, now we're trying to find out if there's a graviton. And I said, I don't think we're finished exploring it. And they literally, as a group, told me I was wrong, that it's all known, it's all explained, and we know why it does. And I thought, wow, this inability to see the other side isn't just going to hillbillies. It's these super smart quantum physicists, and they're locked in their beliefs, and they cannot be brought out of it. I was like, literally, when special relativity was created by Einstein to explain some of the things they couldn't explain by gravity, he then had to make general relativity to explain the stuff special relativity didn't explain. I was like, so even he had to update his understanding along the way. But y'all are thinking it's all settled.
Yeah, I think that, it's interesting. And I hope, travelers, that you take away, regardless of what you believe, first of all, science. Second of all, be willing to learn things and be willing to be wrong and be willing to be ignorant, because the only way you're going to expand your worldview is to have those things. Because, believe it or not, even if you think somebody is wrong, try to get to why their reasoning is that they're there. And a lot of times I've been impressed with things to go, well, why do you do it this way? Right? Well, because when you go back to their reasoning for thinking that, or the reasoning for doing it, there's survival attached to it. Right? So, for instance, Mark here cannot eat onions or garlic. It does a really bad number on him. So he has very particular ways he goes about going to restaurants to eat, because, and I have a coconut allergy. I can't trust sometimes what the restaurants tell me, because, for instance, they're putting coconut oil in chocolate all the time now. If I go and say, hey, does this chocolate chip cookie have coconut in it? They go, no, because they didn't look at whether or not the chocolate chips they put in the chocolate cookie have coconut in them. So reason, be willing to go down these paths, my fellow travelers, and you will find great insight and great knowledge, and you'll learn and meet really interesting people who have fantastic backgrounds if you're willing to be wrong. Roger, thank you so much for being here with us. It's been amazing. You're so much fun.
Shameless self-promotion time. So tell us where they can find you and where they can get your books.
Yeah, if you go to Amazon, type in Roger Grimes, a bunch of computer security books. My latest one is Fighting Phishing, everything you can do to fight social engineering and phishing. It just came out a bunch of weeks ago, but I'm working on my first fiction novel, and that is turning out to be the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, besides surviving cancer. But writing good fiction, much more difficult than it seems.
Yes.
You're preaching to the choir here. So
if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
Don't you have a short story that's out though?
Yeah, so I do have a short story. It was, what was it called? Or what is it called? The Alpha Omega algorithm. And it actually was #1 on Amazon for about 6 weeks. But now when I look at the writing, I'm embarrassed. I'm like, oh my God, the writing's so horrible. I'm so much better now.
We all do
that. You
will
always be, so for anybody listening, you will always be better the next day at whatever it is you're doing than you were the day before. So just love that it's out there. That's the best work you could do at that time.
Yeah, don't give up. That's another life thing. Keep trying.
Awesome. Well, Roger, thank you so much for being here. And with that, Mark, take us away.
All right, well, gang, thanks for sticking with us for Flat Earth on our Earth Day special. Thank you so much. Please to all our sponsors, thank you for supporting us. Thanks to our patrons on Patreon for joining us and supporting us. And if you'd like to do that, visit eerietravels.com and you can join the multitude and join us on Discord and all that, and enjoy our book club. We've been having a lot of fun with that, and we've done movie club now, and we're doing some other things coming up. But with that, I would just like to say to everybody out there, my old favorite show, Doctor Who, had a great quote from the old first Doctor, which was, until then, there must be no regrets, no tears, no anxieties. Just go forward in all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine. And I would like to kind of just rephrase that a little bit for this and to just say, go forward in all your beliefs. Trust in your convictions, even when the path seems uncertain. Remember, doubt is the natural companion of the journey of understanding. And with that, we'll see you on the other side.